Think about Adolf Hitler. Is his reality your reality? Was the reality of Stalin something that should just be seen as okay? When I was in my early 20s, I was into the punk rock skateboard scene, and we were living life fast. We were doing a lot of really stupid things, making a lot of dumb decisions. Our rule collectively as a group of young men was to do what you want to do. I found myself out to drift on an ocean of uncertainty. I didn't have any goals that I was striving for. I didn't have any real point to my life at that time. And it wasn't until my buddy Jeremy got arrested that I realized that this was going nowhere. This was not a life that was leading me closer to my ultimate desires. It wasn't a life that was leading me to what I truly longed for. It was a life that was just wasting time. Under the false pretense of freedom, I was just becoming more and more enslaved to my whim, with no thought for what was good or what was right. Moral relativism is the idea that there is no absolute truth. There is no true truth, but rather that truth differs from each person or each culture. When we ask ourselves, or someone asks us, what's the meaning of life, or what's your purpose? We have no answers, because that's different for every person. Our moral compasses have nowhere to point. They're just spinning because there is no true north. We no longer consider, is this right or wrong? We consider, do I want this or not? With no truth, everything is meaningless because I'm completely free to create my own meaning, just as you are completely free to create your own meaning. Playing football without a playbook is an absolute mess. You've got guys running around thinking they're gonna get the ball, tackling who knows who. It's ridiculous. It doesn't make any sense because there's no plan, because there's no goal, because there's no play, there's no truth, there's no higher power that came up with the plays. It's a hot mess. Nobody's gonna pay to watch a football game with a bunch of guys just doing what they wanna do. They come together instead as a team with a coach around a playbook. Those plays are called and they're able to execute the game as professionals because they believe in a higher power, because they believe that there is someone who knows more about the game of football than they do. That's the same in our lives. If there's no playbook, then what's the point? We're all just gonna be running around in circles looking like fools. That there's a force in the world, God, who is gonna hold us accountable, but at the same time, when we fall down, He's gonna be the first one helping us back up. If we can give men that truth, it creates meaning in life. It creates a trajectory and a destination that we're all striving for. If we truly love one another, we have to hold each other accountable to some truth. It's all fine and good for me to say I love my neighbor or I love the people who I'm driving down the road with. But if my personal choice, if my truth, if my reality dictates that I drive in the same lane as oncoming traffic, it's not very loving because I'm putting myself and I'm putting others at risk. There is a right lane, pun intended, to drive in, and there's the wrong lane to drive in. Just because I feel like I should be able to drive in the left-hand lane with oncoming traffic doesn't make it loving. When I'm thinking only of the things that I want to do, I neglect what other people deserve. Relativism confuses our children. If we aren't giving our children any clear boundaries, they don't know where their life is going. They don't know how to act. And this confusion of our children extends even into gender. We recently have introduced non-gendered birth certificates. So we have little boys and little girls running around not even knowing if they're a little boy or they're a little girl. And this is usually done in the name of love, but I would contend that it's really more a form of cruelty. A lot of times I hear, well, I can't force my child, my son or daughter to fit into a box. I can't force them to come to church. I can't force them to live life a certain way. Well, let me ask you this. Do you force them to wear clothes? Do you force them to eat food? Do you force them to not drive your car? Because those are also things that they probably want to do. If your kids are like my kids, they wanted to run around naked half the time when they were little, or they didn't want to eat, or if they did want to eat, all they wanted to eat was breakfast cereal and Twinkies. But that would have been a profoundly unloving choice for me as a father to allow them to make, because they don't know better. Children don't have the cognitive ability to know truly what is right and what is wrong, so they need our direction. They need our love and our formation. To be tolerant isn't to say, oh yeah, I completely agree with everything you're saying and you're doing, and not only do I agree with it, but I endorse it. Instead, tolerance requires, by the very definition of what tolerance is, it requires me to not be okay with something and then accept to tolerate it anyway. As an example, think of how absurd it would be for me to say, oh, I'm tolerating this beautiful 75-degree day here in Colorado Springs. No, I love it. It's great. It's a beautiful 75-degree sunny day. It makes sense for me to say, well, it's 45 degrees and it's raining and it's June, and I'll tolerate it. I don't love it, but I'll tolerate it. We don't ever tolerate things that we agree with, that we assent to, that we endorse. We tolerate things that we don't agree with. As a Catholic, as a Christian, we're called to truth. We're called by Jesus Christ to be like a city set upon a hill, to be the light to the world, to be the salt of the earth. We're called to represent Him and His truth to those that we encounter. We believe in a higher power that is definitively a higher power who made heaven and earth and who created us in His image. And He invites us to join in His work with Him. God is a relational God who calls us to His truth and to His life. We can't do that if we're relativistic in our worldview. In today's day and age, we're going to be confronted almost daily by moral relativism. But when we start to push back against relativism, we're bringing the light into places that are dark. But when we're doing that, expect there to be pushback on you. So when you're accused of being judgmental or being bigoted, simply say, I'm sorry, are you judging me? And if your friend or your family member or your acquaintance says that they don't believe or they can't accept that you believe that there is a truth, simply answer by saying, that's okay. You can believe that there is no truth, and I'm free to believe that there is a truth. You're not free to impose your beliefs on me, just as you're saying that I'm not free to impose my beliefs on you. Love without truth is sentimentality, and truth without love is brutality.